So, hi there. I assume I am streaming, and we will just see how all this goes. This is Chris from Airwindows. I'm doing my Monday stream, and a blizzard did not come and ruin my stuff, but Google did. So we shall see what that means for us. If you can hear me, it's because I'm live streaming and Google is allowing me to do it. I could spend an entire hour doing this if I'm not able to fix it. I am looking at a scenario where I got my whole stream set up going, but the YouTube stuff is not showing me my live streaming controls that I'm used to using. And my streaming software is set up to go to a particular one stream. Here, let me take a moment. So what I'm going to do is, interesting. Go to my channel, and we're going to ignore that one. I wonder if I can kill it or get rid of it in some way. No, that just added it to a queue, and it's never going to happen. We might spend an hour just basically fucking around with random streamy stuff rather than doing anything useful, but I've just given you a good plugin, so it's fine. This is always what I try to avoid. Like, I have autism, and my situation, like my world has to run in a very specific way for me to be able to cope, and everything is set up in a certain way, and I was looking at a situation. Let me keep fooling with this, all right? YouTube Studio. If you're on the real stream, you cannot see me and hear me, at least, so there's that. Let's go to videos. Oh, hang on, I got a Creator Studio Classic. Yeah, a specific feature I need to use is missing. I'll say live streaming. This is how to deal with companies like Google. We'll say that that is missing. It will go to the original thing. And I do not know whether it's going to let me kill the other stream that doesn't exist. Because the thing about it is, okay, so live streaming. I may still be able to make all of this work, but it's going to be messy. Yeah, here's another thing. You said this is the first curse. You know I have a plugin called Bit Shift Gain. Here's the thing. There's a new reason why I might want to curse up a blue streak on my channel, and I'll tell you why. But first, let's make a special thing happen, and that is chat. Yay! Hi folks, let's set you to live chat. It's been a long time since I've been bothered by bad chatsters. And we'll move it over like this. And then I can essentially see I'm looking a little bit over to the side, but that's fine. And having done that, I can, yay, we're actually all fine after all. Woot. I can open a new window. I'll explain just what happened. And I'll have the chat open. It means that it looks like I'm looking at the camera, which is cool. So here's what happened. I keep all of this stuff running, and my workload is really quite intense. It is a new plugin every week without fail, and a live stream on Monday involving a certain amount of technical support and getting the microphones and cameras and everything good. Preparing the camera by making sure it has batteries because I don't have power for it yet. Here, I'm hoping my levels are, oh yeah, my levels are good. The converter that I use is a really good converter, but its meters are kind of interesting. Rather than being like a DAW and having the meters that go down to like -60 and -120, the meters of the Lavry 8010 are in 1 dB increments, and they go from clipping down to -13. So literally all I see on these meters is the peakiest of peaks. And if that's not happening, they just drop out of sight. So I got to bear with that. But that was another learning experience. You know, it's a challenging learning experience of the sort that people don't normally have to deal with because they're not normally working with gear of that grade. So I have to keep all of this stuff together and figure it all out and get it working. Oh, let me actually check my framing of my shot. No, that's fine. That's fine. Everybody can see everything that they want. And so I keep everything the same. It's the same as when I'm doing, like, following a really complicated series of steps on the computers to make the plugins. I don't actually understand all the little details of fussing around. And here, I kind of think of it. Let me play another game. Can we make the chat full size? That's cool. Hey, you're in small print. Get a load of that. And if I do that, I can kind of scan over what chat says a little bit more fully, and more of you fit on the screen. And now what I'd want to do is adjust my framing. And I can be looking at the chat literally by looking at this, and it looks like I'm looking at your words, which in fact I am, so that all makes sense. So here's the deal. And I'm sure I'm going to have to deal with this at some point. Like I said, I have autism. That's one of the reasons I do the stuff that I do the way that I do it. And that means I can keep a large amount of productivity rolling as long as it is in a pattern that I'm used to. Like I do the same things every day. You know, like I make the same food, all of this kind of stuff. I'm not the best guy for shifting around and varying and doing stuff all different every time. And this matters because in the last couple of months I've dealt with new camera, new microphones, new workflows in a bunch of different ways, and I've evolved ways of doing everything that I do, mostly centering around OBS. OBS is awesome and I'm very, very fond of it. Let me put the other screen back. I keep looking at myself, and that's not great. Or maybe it's great, but it's not useful. So YouTube has just screwed me up and caused me to start late for this reason. They set up a new YouTube studio, and in so doing, and I'm probably going to have cleanup to do as well, their new streaming setup does a number of things. One of the things that they are forcing people to do is use new ways of doing things so that you can specify my shit is not for children, and that's why I'm swearing right now, and I will doubtless continue to swear. Indeed, maybe I'll start swearing right at the beginning of every video. It's, hi, it's Chris from fucking Airwindows. Because if their software identifies the swears, they might or might not mess with monetization, but they're definitely going to block everything from being child friendly, and child friendly is actually a big problem for people right now. There's like Corba rules or something, and I saw people talking about this just the other day, where they were very concerned. It's an animator, and the animator is not doing child animations, but many people assume any animations are by default child animations. And he was kind of downplaying the concern, but there were people in his audience who were being very concerned about the prospect of putting something out, feigning that it is for children, and then putting evil or bad things in it, at which point apparently a government agency can fine you $40,000 or something like that, something really intense that way. And people are frightened by this. And that's one of the reasons I'm not going to be shy of saying the plugin bit shift gain, even if it makes it sound like I'm going, hey, biatch. Because maybe if I swear, YouTube will acknowledge what I told my channel. Yeah, I never do child-only programming. That is not what I'm about. I am working for musicians and building software and coaching adult musicians as they do their thing. And I don't think there's any terrible barrier saying, like, if you are a little kid, you're not allowed to be paying attention to the work that I do. I guess that's your own affair, really. But I think YouTube's concern is about whether or not I'm establishing that I'm trying to target children with my content. Why the fuck would I want to do that? So I'm going to swear more on the grounds of, and probably I honestly don't swear all that much. Every now and then maybe I will, but it's not really that fundamental of a thing. But it might help me protect myself from YouTube doing things that would endanger me or put me in a bad position. Like maybe I want to be associated with the clearly not for child content, and if my terrible, filthy, foul language will help to do that, then that's fine. And if the name of BitShift Game makes people think that it's a swear, I no longer have to worry about that. It's like, okay, free fake swear. Anybody who knows what I do would know that that's not really a swear. But if the YouTube algorithms and closed captioning think it's a swear, okay, that's fine. But yeah, the other thing that YouTube did is that it took away my option to go to my live streaming page that I'm used to using. And the live streaming page that I'm used to using tells me a particular stream ID where I plug it into OBS and it streams and you see it. YouTube's new streaming window, which I have seen before, specifies a stream ID. It's a different ID. I don't know whether it's going to be a different ID each time, which means a whole other pile of fucking idiocy as far as, nor do I know whether the new streaming ID had shut off the old one, rendering me unable to communicate with my peoples. So it seems as if having created that one stream that did not actually work because I didn't start streaming to it, it offered a whole new stream ID, and I don't know whether it will be doing that every single time. And I just fired up OBS and started streaming anyhow using the content that originally was supposed to point towards my stream. And it did. I'm working on 2-tape. Hold your horses, it's coming. That is in let's say early 2020. And by early, I mean, I'm not sure exactly how early we're talking, early. I'm working on 2-tape. Although I don't know specifically what you mean by fixed. Maybe I'm doing something completely different and you're going to be like, damn it, you still didn't fix it. But what YouTube did to me this morning is not even let me have the original streaming thing where I get the window that you're in. I like including chat in the actual stream so that people can see that I'm talking to somebody. I don't have to, but I like doing it. So I panicked and talked to nothing for a while and told everybody to go and look for another stream. And sure enough, it did actually come out as another stream. I'm very pleased that they didn't completely break my whole setup and force me to rebuild it on the fly. That is my pet nightmare. If they do that every single week, I'll be really unfunctional and probably burn out and not be able to continue. They have the power to mess up my world badly enough where I can't keep up. Because I have autism and I need things to run in a certain way. And if they disrupt that every week or so, then I can't function. But they didn't disrupt it this week because I was able to go back to the old thing. And it's not guaranteed that they're going to mess me up super bad by trying to go to the... They have all this stuff about like, you must use the new thing because of the child-friendly things that we have, and you must tell us that you are a... and if any of you are also working in this zone, I'm telling you stuff that is probably useful for you to know. It's one of the services that I provide as Airwindows question and answering. By the way, I'm trying to keep an eye out for questions. I'm seeing questions of other chat members, like folks asking Bo about stuff, but I haven't seen questions about me yet, which is fine. So one possible outcome will be that they will change everything around and refuse to let me use the older scenarios, and they have taken that away from me for the first time this week, which I was kind of suspecting. I get a little stressed out when well, no, there is no backup. Some things I just can't do without being able to use the systems that I use. But when I fired up the new system, one option I did have would be to, as they tell you to, copy the new stream ID and everything, go into OBS and reprogram OBS and go into its settings and stuff and redo all the settings to comply with what the new stream is to be. What I don't know, and I haven't looked up, and I'm not sure if I'm going to get anywhere trying to find out, is whether they are trying to produce a thing where every single time you stream, they're giving you a new stream key. I think that would be bullshit. I would hate it. I would not like to add unnecessary additional steps to my workflow. That said, if they did that and didn't let me weasel out of it, which is something that I could do, something I've been able to do so far, is I never know what OTT is. I think you're just trolling. If they forced me to punch in a new stream key every single time, I would be able to do it. I'd just be hating it. And eventually I'd get used to it and it would become part of the process. And once it was part of the process, that'd be basically fine. It would just be wasting more of my time for no reason. There's a potential security argument that I don't think holds as far as if they give you a new stream ID every time and then kill the old one, then in theory, people who have your stream key and can stream into your channel without your say-so, it would be cutting those people off at the knees. They wouldn't be able to do that. However, I think that is somewhat less likely because this stream key is still working even though I fired up the new stream. It gave me the new ID and then I didn't start using it. It's also possible that as soon as they see the new stream key come in, they kill the old one and then that no longer works. So basically, how all that works is I don't know how much extra trouble they're going to put me through for no reason to continue doing the stuff that I do. I don't know. I just don't know. I am powerless over this. It is part of working with large unaccountable corporations where I have no resource and I can't do anything about it. And that's great. That just feels completely awesome. But that's the world that I live in, and I'm honestly doing better than a lot of people that living in this world. I'm doing basically pretty okay, and I have a platform, and I have the ability to communicate to people. So if they want to, if my platform, not the people, if the platform wants to be evil, then the platform is just going to be evil, and there's nothing I can do about it. And it becomes a wait and see. How evil do they intend to be? They gave up on the don't be evil long, long ago. Like, that is way past. That's not a thing. They've already committed to being evil. The question becomes, how evil? And changing my stream key on me, or changing my stream key even every week, or changing the stream key several times during the stream, if they decided to do that for no particular reason, would, and then sell. You have to pay $50 a stream for an automatic thing that does it for you. It's like, what are you willing to go along with? They're going to push it, if they really properly are evil, as far as they can. And they're not interested in me, nor are they trying to help me in any way. So it's like, how adaptable can I be? And the answer is, I have autism. I can't be very adaptable. I can be very productive. I've kept up a workflow over the last 3 years that would make a lot of people go splat. And the reason I'm still here is that I'm pretty intelligent about how I manage all that. Like, I keep the overhead low. I've set things up so that all the stuff that I'm doing, I'm essentially doing it through the same piece of software that I'm familiar with by now. And I more or less know everything that I have to do as part of this workflow. So if it's a long string of things that I have to do, I might be grumpy about it. Making the video for PowerSag 2, and PowerSag 2 is the thing that just came out. I was very grumpy going into it, and I'll tell you why. It's because I have a string of things, and I forgot lots of little obvious details. Like, I got ready to make the video, and I had my microphone set up. It was like tucked into my shirt, and I had the headphones plugged in, and I forgot that I like wearing these glasses so that I can read things up close. And, being a YouTuber, you kind of develop your visual look, and that's just a thing. That is, more or less what you do. And people can do it in various ways. Like, I watch a YouTuber who goes by Ben and Gear. I think his name is Ben. And he's a hardware reviewer. He's not super prolific. I'm more prolific than him. But his thing is, I'm an ugly man. I have this partly graying, patchy, weird beard, and I have a skin condition and stuff like that. So he basically heightens that. He just, like, if he wears makeup, it's to make himself look even grottier. And he just rolls with that. He has good camera quality. He does great content. But rather than go with, we all need to look like, what is that name of that fellow? I'm trying to think of the name of the Asian YouTuber who reviews hardware and synthesizers and things, and is quite a good musician. And I was criticized when I was working on the camera stuff because people thought I was going for this beauty shots kind of thing. And that guy is a very good example of, he looks like a fashion model. His visual quality, both of his video and also of his presumably makeup. I find it hard to believe that one would not do any makeup. I mean, I even freaking do some makeup for the Sunday ones, which I expect more people to watch, because otherwise, like glares off your nose and stuff. And you can take the video and make it go a particular way. It doesn't always have to be pretty and glamorous, as long as you know it. Yeah, that's the guy, Andrew Huang. I like his stuff. I've watched a number of his videos. He's a darn good musician. He is a beautiful man. Oh my goodness. He is so glamorous looking, it is just horrifying. His eyes are fairly close together, but he's so beautiful. And he has the super beauty shot stuff going on. So there's that. very high resolution camera, very close up, very like circle light highlights and all of that kind of stuff. It's useful to know those things. I don't like it when YouTube makes you jump through hoops as far as changing your workflow in unnecessary ways, but we're probably getting close to the point where I'm going to have to start rolling with because they're not giving me a choice anymore. It's like if they have killed the option to do the live streaming using the classic interface once, they're only going to keep doing it again until they no longer even let me do that. Essentially what I'm doing is telegraphing to them, hi, I'm a really stupid person, so I never can find the thing that I've actually tried several times. At least at one point, I think they gave me the option of like, I don't like the new interface. They no longer give me that option. So now it's only like, I can't find the new interface, even though it's right in front of me, staring me in the face, and they're compelling me to do it and putting buttons in the place. I'm still claiming I can't find the stuff that I need to do, when the real message is, I can find it, but it's forcing me to change my stream key, and I'm worried about it changing my stream key every single time. I don't know whether that's going to be the case, because I haven't tried it 2 times in a row. So only then will I know whether they're going to force me to punch in a new Steam key in my streaming software every single time I go live. I will hate that if that's the case. I don't know if that's the case. We'll find out. And yeah, let's indeed talk music, because it's 11:30, so I've got another half hour to go. I'm thinking maybe if I can get to $2,000, I'll start doing a thing where it's like, guess what, guys? I am going to tie the number of minutes that I do on Monday and Tuesday, and indeed Wednesday when I start reviewing other people's things. We might need to evolve evergreens. Because, Bo, I heard in the evergreens on the Beatles Revolver, which was interesting and has caused some results for me. I'm doing some things as a result of that. And one of the things I'm doing is my Tuesday streams, I'm getting a hardware compressor. I'm getting a Heritage Audio compressor to go with the mixer, and I'm going to learn how to set that up because I was that impressed by what the Beatles were doing on Revolver. It is a spectacular example of doing a particular kind of thing using limiting much the same way that modern stuff uses it. And I think I can identify like ideal amounts of compressing and limiting and get into a kind of formula for evergreen sounds that is not nearly as loud as modern CDs. It's probably not quite as loud as the Beatles Revolver. I think the Beatles Revolver is slightly in excess of what you want. I think they discovered this limiting and then they started abusing it immediately and dialed it back a little bit. So, but what they discovered was in fact very important. And the speaker mic setup, I was hearing it on lots of songs. It's definitely not just Paperback Writer and Rain. They had that going on. It's typical for people who are doing music. You come across a new thing and all of a sudden you're using it on literally everything until you get sick of it. So they were using it all over the place, and I pointed it out in a number of places on the podcast. Now, when I say we're going to have to rethink the Evergreens podcast, I'm maybe going to ask you guys for permission to make a change. And that is, let's do Evergreens podcast until I hit the goal where I'm doing the Wednesday live stream, much like this one, but analyzing a patron's music. Let me replace the regularity of Evergreen's podcast with that when we get to that point. I'm not going to get a Fairchild, that's too expensive. But Heritage Audio, man, I am actually quite into them, although I'm paying through the nose for their stuff, because they're like the, quietly off in Spain, making what's attempting to be kind of original versions based on Neve concepts. And if you got the actual Neve things that they try to do, it is stupidly expensive. Like a Neve console, hundreds of thousands of dollars. 2 Neve compressors or whatever a Neve bus compressor would be, that's going to be many, tens of thousands of dollars. And although it's definitely a bit of a hit, I'll tell you about it so that anything you want to know about my process of learning this, I will share. Heritage does mixers and things, and the mixers are capable of coming unplugged and shipping, so you have to be self-sufficient enough to take them apart and reseat all of the little things. I'm going to be doing the same thing with the compressor just in case it doesn't go through shipping properly. And the reason that happens is that the cables are heavy and solid and serious inside it. But they've come out with a compressor. It is called the successor compressor, which is kind of, okay, that's cheesy, but a number of cool things about it. It's what's called the diode bridge compressor. I'm not really quite sure what that means, but it's not a VCA exactly. Instead, it's something else. And it's it's like a weird sort of hybrid between a VCA compressor, which is like your 1176 kind of thing that can react very abruptly, but maybe it's a little bit more gritty and electronic than you want. And an opto compressor, which is much more organic but limited in how quickly it can react and what it can do. And opto compressors are things that use Vactrols. It's the kind of stuff where if you were DIYing it super hardcore, you could do that by buying a bunch of cadmium sulfide photocells and LEDs and building your own Vactrols, or buying ones and they'll cost you like $1.50 maybe in bulk from supply houses, at which point you'll have ones that don't naturally lend themselves to being a harmonic, to being a compressor. So what you have to do is doctor the LED to put out the right kind of light levels to work for you, rather than just using the LED's raw response. Or in classic opto compressors, it would be a literal light bulb, and so that has a speed of response and stuff too. Then you're building other circuits that are essentially like EQ circuits that are keeping some DC energy around and using that to light the light bulb, or envelope generators, anything that you've got that will do the job of lighting up the light with the exact envelope that you want, because the CDSL that's not the desirable one, instead it's a cheap one that you can get, won't automatically do the right response. Instead, it'll probably do something quicker and more accurate, and that's not necessarily what you want. So, because of the Evergreen podcast and studying Revolver, I was like, oh my God, okay, this is a very major piece. I'm going to need to get a hardware compressor, because remember, my studio is what the software is based off of. My ear needs to be tuned into the highest quality stuff I can get together in order to, when I'm building the plugin, I need to be saying, that's not good enough. Shit, I need to make it a lot better, and keep working at it and keep in my head this notion of like, yeah, that is what it's supposed to be, and it's not there yet. Because if I get too used to working with just plugins, my ear will start attuning itself to what it's expecting to hear from those, and I get much less discriminating. I get much less picky. That's bad. I need to be very picky. I need to be like full-on autism, fussy, it's not right, must make it be better, and just impossible to please by just pedestrian plugins so that I can make them be better. There's a video of Rupert Neve talking about diode compressors. In that case, that would explain why it's associated with this. In any case, I will be getting this successor compressor, and I'll let you know how it works, and you'll be hearing it on Tuesdays. In fact, you'll be hearing it on Mondays because it'll be part of the signal chain. I'll be working on ways of patching it in I would be able to bypass it, and I'm not sure whether I'm going to need to patch the, I think I've got stuff patched in differently where the MIDI verb, I'll be figuring out stuff, put it that way. Like I've got a preamplifier that works with my record player, and I can probably, I'm looking back and forth between these as I speak. Right now, the reverbs on my stuff are going through the microphone preamp again, so that they can be brought up to a level that's hot enough that it's a loud reverb in the mix. Especially if I want to do like space ambient. People sometimes ask me for space ambient. I so rarely do it, but I'm pretty good at it. So continue begging me for stuff if you want me to do more musical things, because that's basically for me just exploring the audio creation stuff, and there's no reason it can't be in different genres. Like I could be doing a trance thing for that matter. I need to make a note for myself, like remember to update the tempo, because my stuff starts up at 120 beats per minute, and if I don't remember to change it, I'm automatically doing like sort of classic house in a rather boring tempo. And so that's that. So I need to remember to do that. But that means I could go up in tempo or down, and that is very distinct. Like up in tempo means trance or side trance or even additional other things. I can do a good job of it, but it's less inclined to like playing guitars and stuff over. Lower in tempo makes it down tempo, and or like, oh God, what's mezzanine? Trip hop. Down tempo can also be trip hop, and I can do that genre real good. I've got all the sounds together for it, and I like the space of inside trip hop, and that has more spaces for playing leads and things over. Which is not to say that I need to spend all of my time playing leads, but now that I have the chord organ thing, following chords that make musical sense, it's more fun to play leads because it's less challenging. But also, I spend time developing that so that I can push it. Like I was visiting my brother on Sunday, and it was the usual, like, I need to hear all about his work. I need to hear his health stuff. He's doing better, thankfully. His 2 strokes were no joke. I always worry a little bit about that happening to me, but I'm trying to just, like, if I do have strokes, it's Google's fault for changing my world. But, not hi-fi Airwindows trip hop, man. Hi-fi, not lo-fi. I can do lo-fi with the radio musics, but I've specifically chosen stuff to get me more into hi-fi rather than lo-fi. Like if I was building everything using radio musics, that's 12-bit. And I can do that really well. In fact, anytime you hear my voice on the Tuesday jams, it's coming out of a radio music module, and it's coming across as 12-bit, and I dithered it to 12-bit using the Not Just Another Dither plugin and bit shift gains. And so I can do very interesting things with lo-fi sampling. In fact, I'm going to be building some more chord organs and things because I have a couple of radio music plugins that are the samplers, and there's a lot of very cool things about them, although they're not super accurate and correct samplers. And I reprogrammed one of them to be a bass for the chord organ stuff because, of course, you can get them with the different faceplates, but they're the same thing. You flash a different firmware into it, and it turns it into a different kind of device, which I love. I love how the ability to do stuff like that. That's why I think that musical hardware in a DIY kind of sense is kind of the future. You can do a lot with that if you know how to fend for yourself and do these things. And I guess I could say that's a 2020 goal, that I'll be doing more of that and helping people with it more. But, gosh, what was I getting on about? Here, let me drink more of my delicious coffee. I keep myself in good coffee at all costs. I hand grind it myself just before making it. It's awesome. It was something about radio music. I was talking about the compressor that I'm getting. I was going to mention, as far as samplers, which is what I use for the snare drum on my stuff. In fact, I have a dedicated sampler that specifically just only does snare drum. If you go lo-fi, I heartily recommend Radio Musics. It's the Music Thing modular Radio Music. You basically get some kind of Eurorack thing together. You can DIY that too if you really want. And you build this thing. I think that their instructions for how to build it are really good, and I'm very pleased with it. I've still yet to build any of the Erica synths DIYs because they're too hard. They require too much prep. The prep is exactly the same as what Music Thing Modular does for you, which is take everything and put it into little labeled bags so that when you're looking for a 100K resistor, it is, you look up the bag and go, oh, one of these. And it requires 5, and there's 5 in there in a little strip. And you take it and you solder it into the right place and go, I've done the thing. What Erica Synths does is it throws all of those parts into a single bag, unlabeled, unmarked. You got to put on your reading glasses or a magnifying glass, and you'd better have good eyes, and maybe look up your color coding thing for how to identify resistors by color code, and you separate them out into those categories yourself. And this is doable. I could do it. I can do it, and I will be doing it. But it's a huge pain in the butt. I don't want to do it. And so I've yet to start on the Erica Synth stuff. So I have yet to find out whether the build, once you get past that point, is easy or hard. And I do have some stuff that I'm really looking forward to doing with the Erica Synths DIYs. But yeah, word to the wise, if you get their DIYs, they're not nearly as easy and hand-holdy as the Music Thing Modular stuff. Music Thing Modular is really very step-by-step as well. Just like, find these, put these here, find these, put these there. And honestly, I think that is a good thing. I don't need to have my brains be tested by how to assemble the damn module. If I'm designing them for myself, then I can do it. And I've had some cool ideas for modules that I can make. In particular, what I'd really like to do, I want a big knob where you turn the knob and it enables or disables patch-throughs for triggers. So I can plug the drum triggers that I've got through this thing with a bunch of jacks to their ultimate destinations. And then having done that, there'll be a big knob, and turn it all the way counterclockwise and everything is on. You turn it all the way clockwise and everything is off. And then intermediate ones mute and unmute different things. You can even do it by way of sets of switches. But the whole idea is, rather than, because I mean, that drum sequencer, and it's an awesome drum sequencer, by the way. I heartily endorse those to the extent that, I mean, it's good. None of this stuff is endorsed in the sense of they're giving me it or even giving me a break on it. The only place that gives me a break on stuff is Sweetwater Sound usually cuts me a deal if I order enough stuff at once. And having done that in a number of times, I can keep them doing it. So that's useful to know. Like if you wind up being able to throw money at gear, and it's the kind of gear that Sweetwater can sell, it's pretty worth it to sort of go back to the well there. And, you know, they give you the personal sales executive, and then they start sending you thank you letters and checking up on whether everything is okay. If you like that, that's fine. I don't. I told them not to do it. But you say, oh, hi, I'm Chris. Remember me? I got this. Now I'm thinking about getting some other things. What can you do for me as far as making that be cheaper? What kind of margin have you got on that? And the message you're saying is like, hey, I am, you know, big dick swinging heavy roller. I throw a lot of money at you, so I expect you to treat me well. And they respond pretty good to that, especially if you're friendly. And I've consistently gotten some nice little discounts off of stuff that I got, so long as I remember. It's not about just every little thing. It's more like I'm waiting around until it's like, let me throw a pile of money at you. Now make that worth my while. Make it so that I want to go to you for that purpose. And then they do. So it goes pretty good that way. And that's the only people that cut me a break. Like, Heritage doesn't have any idea who I am, nor do they care, nor would they necessarily like the fact that I'm telling people that you have to replug the stuff in. That said, I think it's worth it. You just have to be able to maintain the gear. And it's not just plug and play. It's not like Mackie or something that you should be able to throw into the back of the truck and it'll be fine. It's like, no, you have to pay a little better attention to it than that. And Erica Synths probably doesn't like me talking about their DIYs, and they did not cut me any kind of a deal other than getting a bunch of... if I remember correctly, I did talk to them about getting a... I don't remember. Because usually what I like to do is save up stuff, so I'm going to some entity like that. I'm going to Erica Synths and ordering stuff directly from them, or I'm going to Thonk for getting the music modular stuff, or I'm going to Sweetwater for a pile of whatever I can find. And going to them with a big shopping list and saying, this is my big shopping list, give me a break for a volume discount on all of this. And that works in many, many places. Like, it works in a blue jeans store. I went to a blue jeans store that sells like good Levi's that aren't going to wear out. There's special versions of Levi's, like there's the Walmart kind, and then there's normal retail store kind, and then there's like factory outlet kind, and there's various places you can go for that. I go to a place in West Lebanon, New Hampshire called Birth of the Blues that is this complete head shop. When that means nothing to me. I'm like, okay, you guys keep having fun. I'm glad that I'm not smelling dope in the place. But they sell Levi's, and they are a licensed outlet for the primo factory store kind of Levi's, and that's going to wear better and last better and fit better and all that kind of stuff. And the last time I went out there, I've been losing weight because it's healthy for me to do so, but also it saves me money if I don't eat as much, and I eat the same thing all the time, so I get to optimize that as well. So I've optimized food for eating less of it. Like, I stopped eating meat products other than I do make an omelet. So I stopped eating like sausages and bacons for breakfast, partly because my crew, you folks, so many of you are like millennial vegan avocado eating silly people, and I love you for it. So it's like, I will emulate that when it suits me to do so. And I decided, like, okay, it's time for me to stop eating this dumb stuff that's a pain in the butt to cook anyway, and I'll just eat less. And so I went down some jean sizes. I'm wearing a 34 now. It's maybe a little tight sometimes, but it's like, yeah, I think I can get used to that, so I'm keeping it. So what I did, and this was my Thanksgiving thing, I haven't told anybody much about this, but I'll tell you, not because it's going to help my channel or be public, but because it's kind of unpublic. It's just you folks, and you would appreciate this. I went to the store and was like, what have you got in the 34 or 32? And they're like, oh, today we have all of the different colors. Look at this. We have this red and a green and a black and a stuff. And I was like, huh, really? Well, I'm needing to get into this new jean size, and I'm going to keep it. I'm not going to gain weight again, and I probably can't get much smaller than this. So it's like, what will you do? Give me a volume discount if I buy everything that you've got. And it was a pretty substantial quantity of jeans, but I'll never need to buy jeans again. I was actually joking around. And they gave me a discount on the jeans because I bought a pile of them. And so now I was joking around. It's like, I never need to see you assholes again. I am set for that as long as my weight basically stays the same, or probably can get a little bit lighter, but that's not going to happen unless I go full vegetarian. because that would, if you're concerned about like being fit and trim and stuff, one way to do that is to go full vegetarian and you start losing weight. That literally happened to my brother. He's lost like 100 pounds since the strokes. He went vegetarian in a serious way because they told him he had to. And he's like protecting himself. He has a kind of self-protection that I will never have. I'm older and I got more of an abusive childhood and I don't have that going on. I don't have the self-protection thing going on. What I have is giving to people, and that makes my life worthwhile. It's not worth protecting on its own. It's what I can do with it that matters. And that's what I did with my old jeans that no longer fit. I mean, it fits. They fit if I wear belts and stuff. I took a big pile of nearly new, and in a couple of cases I got the wrong size of something and I didn't do anything with it. I was like, oh, that sucks. I screwed up. And so I had new clothes. I had some white Dickies that I thought were going to be like a Tuesday uniform. Like, I'll dress all in white and flash colored lights. And like, I got them and they were the wrong size. And I was like, oh, screwed that up. And I took the entire pile of, in some cases new, and in many cases just about new, and all really nice and high quality clothes, and brought them to SEVCA. SEVCA is Southeastern Vermont Community Action. It's like if Salvation Army was good, which Salvation Army is not. It's a local place, and they run stores. They're called Goodbye stores, and take donations, and then sell stuff really, really cheaply. And there are some places that will find stuff and go like, holy crap, that's like new factory style Levi's. We'd better sell this to somebody so that we can get some money to do this stuff. And I think SEVCA doesn't do that. Instead, they're going to put it on the rack at the same price as anything else, like $10 for a pair of pants. So I might have just improved some people's Christmases pretty much. I will never know. They didn't even see I brought in the bags of clothes and they're like, yeah, put them over here. They better be clean. And I'm like, yeah, I think you'll find that they are. And then I scooted out, and I will never see their reaction, but some people over there are going to have their jaws drop pretty hardcore because they're like, damn, this is primo stuff. And then they'll put them out there, and people coming into the store trying to get clothes just to get through the winter will be like, and that makes me feel happy, even though I will never know the full result of it. So yeah, I'm scanning the talk. Bo, start asking questions about music. You want to talk music? We've got another 5 minutes or so, and I can probably stretch it a little bit because the camera's not going to die that fast, and I'm in a groove as far as this. I do have to leave before 1, and I'll tell you why. Patreon gave me an email saying, oh, because you came to our Patreon and stuff, and you also signed up for the online thing that they did, I actually did not attend. They wanted people to pay attention to this like silly live stream thing that was not at all the same thing as the actual con they held. But I had registered for it, and then I went to the modular synthesizer meetup at Hampshire College, and that's what I did that day. But I did sign up for it. So they sent me this thing saying, sign up for a one-on-one meeting with a marketing specialist from Patreon who will tell you how to optimize your thing. So I told him, like, yes, by all means, I will have a meetup. Sure, I'll take an hour to talk to your people and do your best, because I know what I'm doing and I'm not going to be bullshitted. So I'll be able to report to you what Patreon are doing as far as their efforts for helping struggling creators, which I am not one. I'm not a struggling creator. In their measurements, I am like beyond the life-changing Patreon mode and moving towards 2x life-changing Patreon mode, which I told them in the comments that they had, for like any other things you want to mention. And I mentioned that. And they will be telling me how to increase my engagement and stuff, and I will turn around and tell you how that worked out and what they had to say. Because it might be useless information. They might just be blowing a bunch of smoke. But if they know anything that's useful, I will pass it on. So let me go and look over this chat. I have a question that I missed. It's still on screen. Dimitavi Corp Zone. Do I think it's a good idea to dither a track anyways, even if it's going to a lossy codec? If you're going into a fixed point measuring system, like if your software, and unfortunately it's difficult to tell whether that is the case, if your software is capable of making the MP3 while taking in like basic core audio bus or something like that, like if you're feeding into the thing 32-bit floating point as part of the floating point bus, then you don't want to just dither it for no reason. But if you have to export to an intermediate file that is, say, 24-bit, then you're going to want to dither to 24-bit and then make the MP3 out of it. Anytime you go to the fixed point format, that's when you dither. And as far as the floating point dither, that's my problem. Anytime you go back to a floating point bus that is less resolution than what you're working on, my stuff floating point dithers. But that's not something that you as a user would do. So, yeah, dither if it's going to the format that you're dithering to. Delta plugin, everybody keeps talking about that. Last half of Tuesday's Jam, Meat Beat Manifesto. Cool, cool. If I'm doing stuff that's good, I'm not surprised that it is echoed by other people doing stuff. Out-of-phase bass speaker setup Beatles used. No, I don't know anything about that. I know about the bass speaker being used on Revolver as a microphone. And I know about out-of-phase monitor speakers that Peter Gabriel and other people used for, that's what Voice Trick is. I haven't heard about a bass speaker setup that's out of phase. You can't do bass out of phase speakers because it cancels it. Am I going to have a cat again? No, I don't think so. No, I don't think so. I have to dedicate everything towards just the, I'm not sure what I'm going to do as far as like cuddles and emotional support. I may do without it. Like you guys might be my cat. You can be my cat. How about that? That'll be the thing. Now you're going to start meowing all the time. That'll be funny anyway. That's cool. It's healthier to eat less often. Yeah, I think so. I keep around like peanuts to snack on, and that's also worthwhile. Like, rather than being like, this is my meal, I must eat large quantities of food because it is meal time. It's like, yeah, no, graze on stuff that's healthy. One of the reasons I like nuts is they're not sweet. If you graze on candy, that's bad. You could just as easily, like if I kept like a rack of lettuces behind me, growing in hydroponic, whatever, and then went over and grazed on those, that'd be just as good, arguably maybe even better, if depending upon how they compare relative to peanuts or whatever. But grazing on little bits of food is definitely awesome. It's good. And I did answer the dither question, so classical composers and their compositional pointers. To some extent, and that's an interesting conversation, but I can't specify Brahms and Debussy. One of the things I was talking about, actually, I went and visited my brother, and I explained to him what circle of fifths meant and what jazzy was, and I explained to him about giant steps. And the cool thing about it, there often I will struggle with I'll say stuff like, oh, one of my brothers thinks I don't think and the other one thinks I don't work. When you get down to it, that's just me being kind of damaged. Like the reason I'm Chris from Airwindows is that I started out kind of damaged and it's like overcompensating. In another world, I could be just this dude that did a bunch of finger painting and stared at the wall a lot, and if I had been really cared for, I would have had a more comfortable life and probably wouldn't have become Chris from Airwindows. Go figure. Which I don't think is an excuse for like not taking care of people. It's a balance. It all depends. And when I went to visit my brother, although I was stressing out about it a little bit, and none of them will ever pay attention to this stuff for most of the things that I do without a lot of prompting, so I can say anything I want about them pretty much, and they'll never hear it or know. But we ended up talking about the game ideas thing because I had done a programmed counterpart, so I have that in my catalog. Nobody knows, but that's media for you. And that's a solo game. And then I did what's called Cluster Fluff, and I haven't released it yet. And there's nowhere that I can communicate about it, because that realm is completely full of people doing it full time. There's no way to get it out. But I did a thing that's like codename Cluster Fluff, and it is another solo game, but this one my brother watched the entire time because he was trying to figure out how I did stuff, because he didn't see, he couldn't work out how anything actually happened from what I did. He wasn't following the intuitive chain because he doesn't think that way. So he was like, well, logically, Chris created nothing. And yet, here is this entire thing which seems to have some consistency and make a kind of sense. It's a thing, and my logic says it couldn't exist, therefore I'm missing something. Oh, you keep asking me how do I check my plugins. I don't. They're built in these templates, and the templates just work, and if somebody complains about something being broken, I fix it in the template. So when I build the plugins, I bring them up usually in Twisted Wave, which is a 2-track editor, and it loads both AU and VST plugins. I used to bring stuff up and do videos in Logic. I didn't really test plugins in Logic, because if they work in Twisted Wave, they should work in Logic. And now I do videos in Reaper. So I bring the plugins in Reaper, and I typically show the VST version. And if they work in Twisted Wave, they should work in Reaper. Everything that I do is based on working across the widest range of stuff. So when it's about checking plugins, it's like my system should take care of that. There shouldn't be anything about it that's different. So I'll hear about it when people have problems. And if I'm not hearing about it, which is most of the time, it's because people aren't having problems. So I got together with my brother and we started like talking about stuff. I caught up with all of his thing. I spent like solid hour or more hearing about his work and stuff that's happening in the world of programming and all that kind of stuff. And then at some point he was like, I've been thinking I'm going to try a different idea as far as us making games together. And I'd already privately decided, like, I am not, you're going to have to specify better, Bo, because I don't know what you mean by for the actual functions. I load up stuff and listen to it. I'd already decided that the next game idea that I have that is sort of stacked up and waiting once I finish Cluster Fluff, which is not done yet. It needs music, it needs audio. When I start the new one, rather than doing it with Dan, I'm going to have to do it on my own, because I can't function in this thing where it's like I do all this stuff and he just watches and he's like, you didn't think. You know, what he meant was not the way I'm used to thinking. And what he said was, it seems like you don't think. And it hurt my feelings and I was mad. So I decided, like, well, I'm on my own now. And he decided, I'm going to have to do something different because it still isn't working. And he came up with an idea, which was, I'm going to start a thing, and it'll be what I expect, because I can only do stuff where I know what the outcome is going to be, which means I make games that work and function and are exact clones of something else which nobody cares about. And you make games, and I don't check the spectrum, I listen. And he says, you make games that are not like anything I've ever seen before, and that's valuable too. That is valuable in its own special way, and I can't do that. So he had this idea, like, here's what we're going to do if you're willing to do it. I'm going to start a game, and I'll code it. It's going to be happening more in 2020 because he's still catching up on the post-stroke, catching up with his work. But I'm going to code a thing which is a existing game as I know it. We're picking like Space Invaders. And then we're going to take it in a direction where I don't know what the end result is going to be, but every step along the way is going to be a working, functioning game of some kind. So what can you do? He's like, let's start with this. I'm going to pick Space Invaders. What can we do with Space Invaders? And I was like, really? You're going to start a thing using your strengths to do it, and now you're asking me to just go creative and imagine entirely new things and take the game in a direction that I specify, but we both can help make it happen? And you might think, like, it's a big ask. No, that sounds great. Sure, let's do it now. And by the time I left, we had thought up an entire elaborate system of like cool things that make a Space Invaders-y kind of thing that is yet totally different and distinct. And that's going to be a lot of fun to fool with. And the neat thing about it is that it's defeating some of the problems we had, because he's specifically asking me to go in a direction that I can go effortlessly. Whereas he's starting it out in this direction that he can do effortlessly. But he's not asking me to be him, and I'm not asking him to be me. So that'll be interesting. It may be that what ends up happening is every time we get together, we like produce some kind of awesome game that becomes open source and put it out. So you guys will be able to be fooling around playing with games as well as plugins with no difficulty in doing that at all. But that's the neat thing. It's like, the part that he's looking to do is the part that he's just suited to do. And he was asking, can you do this? And I was like, I can do this right now. You want it right now? Here, let's come up with some stuff. And then I pitched a bunch of ideas, and they were all good ideas, and they worked. That's what I call fun. So that feels rewarding. Now let me scan over here. People are asking about Dark Atoms. Bo is asking, like, what software do I check the plugins on for the actual functions? I listen. I load stuff up in Twisted Wave. I listen to what the plugin does. I don't know what you mean by checking the functions. It's like I load it up and I use the plugin, and that's what I do. Yeah, I work really hard on being in speaking terms with my brothers. Typically, I don't check a spectrum unless there's something where I need to. If I do check a spectrum, I'm using span, Voxenko span. Waveforms, less likely. I can zoom in on waveforms if there's a reason to. If something's happening where it's like it's making an artifact, I'll zoom in on the artifact. I'll check that. If I don't need to check in on something, I don't need to zoom in on a waveform. I don't need to... Remember, mix with your ears and not your eyes. So it's not about zooming in on the spectrum or zooming in on the waveform and making it do what my brain thinks the waveform should be. This is why I avoid kinds of plugins where it's about, like, let's make a particular waveform be a thing. Cosmic, is there really no difference between EQ and C-strip or just EQ? There should be no difference because I programmed it that way. I suppose it's possible that there is, but when they're the same thing and they're designed to be the same, then you get to, in EQ in C-strip, you get to use it in C-strip, but you can also set everything to bypass. And the bypass should entirely take out the stuff that's not being used. I don't use Plugin Doctor. Yeah, that was asked of Bo, but I don't use Plugin Doctor. I could, I choose not to. Power Sag is a surprise. Cool. And one suggestion for next evergreens, and I can probably do something like that. I've actually been thinking about Tangerine Dream because I got this little box set of the earliest Tangerine Dream albums. So the very earliest stuff is very slow and very static and could lead to something talking about. And again, I'm going to bounce this off of you guys now. I don't think it's going to be a concern right away. I'm going to ask your permission for when I get to the point of doing the Wednesday live stream analyzing somebody's music or somebody's musical content in such a way where I can listen to it and do a live evergreen style thing where the stream and YouTube can hear the music. And when I start doing that, I'm going to ask to let that replace the vinyl records evergreens, which has to be so very private, partly so that it can be available to more people, and which, I could still add them from time to time, but not being tied to the schedule that I'm on, so that I can replace that piece of the schedule, which I do find kind of stressful, with something that is more rigidly time scheduled and more public facing. I'm thinking it's going to be Tangerine Dream because I don't have Blade Runner, I don't have Kraftwerk. I have a old Vangelis album, but I don't like it, and I don't think it's really very good. It's one of his last super early prog rock albums, and not under his actual name. But I do have a bunch of Tangerine Dream, so I'll pick out something that's good. Honestly, you know what's good? Phaedra. The early stuff, like I've got Zeit, and I don't have any of the other super early stuff. It's really primitive. It's kind of neat, but they started getting into their zone, and Phaedra is a very good example of that and was one of their big hits. And then they did like Rubicon, which is like Phaedra over again. RGBiv is Boards of Canada. That's not that Tangerine Dream at all. I like Boards of Canada. I don't have them as evergreens, nor are they part of this time period. And then they would do stuff like Stratosphere, which is more experimental and interesting in its way. And then what's the Force Majeure, which actually has beats and stuff. And I've got a bunch of those Tangerine Dream albums. I like them. I think I'm going to pick Phaedra, and that's going to represent the Tangerine Dream. And that sounds like a good choice. We'll do that. So let's see. So no desperate hurry to shut off the camera. Also, again, the asking about ditching the vinyl record private evergreens in order to go to evergreens as a listening to patron content evergreens, which at that point I think I can, because I can always go back to the well and return to people who have already been covered. I should have no problem running out of stuff. Instead, I'll open it up. I can open it up to patrons, and that can motivate more people to sign up, but there will be no like price. If you're a patron, that's enough. And I definitely feel like replacing the vinyl record one with the public facing one is what I'm going to do. So just heads up as far as that's concerned. And one more thing. That's at a funding goal of $2,000. And it replaced another one, which was like, all of my stuff is going to go to, I don't know, 3 hours if it's $3,000 or something. I was thinking of expanding all of this stuff for like today's stream and this talking about people's music stream. So one thing I might decide to do, especially if I get the gear to be able to power the camera without the battery, because I can't do 2 hours on the battery of this camera as it stands. It runs out and it goes black. So that forced me into a more 1 hour schedule. I also took the music into a within the size of a CD schedule, and then I have never used that. I just scaled it back to do less time in a particular context, but there's no real reason I couldn't just expand it. So one thing I could do is kind of like what Loading Ready Run does with Desert Buzz. Loading Ready Run is an internet comedy troupe. They're also on Patreon. They have one of those high patron entry fees where it's like their minimum is $5, but it's covering a whole thing. So they don't have if they had the $1 thing, I'd be on it. At this point, I probably could be, but I typically have just stuck with like the stuff that you can commit to if you're just a little guy. And they do Desert Bus, which is a fundraiser for Child's Play charity. And it extends as long as they keep taking money in. Like the amount of money that they get specifies how many hours they do. And each new hour is like 7% more expensive than the previous one. So they it expands outwards, and the more they take in, the longer they go. And so they always end up going into the middle of the night and they get exhausted, and it's kind of fun to watch them just get wrecked. But there's no reason, if I choose my stream times wisely, that I can't make a sort of equation and go like, okay, here's I can make it visible, much like my quilts and sofa sign is. I can make another sign saying like, I am at this, I'm at 1,600, or I'm at $2,000. $2,000 equals exactly 2 hours on Monday, on Tuesday, on Wednesday, because the plugin introductions, it's not like that. But the live streams that I do run the number of minutes that are being paid for by the Patreon. So you go to the, if I start doing that, I would have to do that by getting the power supplies for the camera and something. Maybe that's something that I can, let me see whether I can do that by January. I'll do it by 2020 and then move into this. From that point on, there is a simple algorithm, and it is the number of hours that I do is equal to the number of thousands in the Patreon at that time. So if we reach a total of 2,000, I'll be doing 2 hours again. If I reach 3,000, I'll do 3 hours. And so on, and we'll see how that goes, and maybe it will expand. Maybe that'll be another reason for it to expand. But you'll get back the time more that way. And then if it all collapses and I wind up making diddly squat, then I have less of a commitment. And I can chill out a little bit more and have more time to work and do stuff. That could be a thing. So let's look in terms of doing that, both in terms of, because especially if we're doing that, a live stream on Wednesday that is potentially a long one, and then spending another couple of hours getting together the Evergreens thing and doing that for only the people that are watching the Patreon and the Discord, that might be a little messy. So pick vinyl records wisely, because eventually I'm going to switch away from it and only do it sort of when I have a good reason to, or if I have something to communicate using that. But I'm not going to stay on a schedule of doing this thing that is very private and only for the few. I want stuff to be public facing. And then it'll tie to the size of what the Patreon is, and that'll be how many hours I spend. And I'll probably run a little bit over, but that's what I'll have in mind, which will mean that I will quickly jump beyond just an hour and then be closing in on committing to 2 hours again, and then it can keep expanding if it keeps going. And we'll see how that goes. And covering the music of people that are on the Patreon, which will be expanding. So that'll be good too. That'll be another way for me to give back. You can have your stuff heard, and then I'll talk about it and encourage what it is to be encouraged. So, yeah. I see talk about dithering. We can get back to that. I'm not really quite sure what this stuff is about. I'm not going to run out of coffee. Don't worry about that. Yeah, audio going to a lossy codec depends on whether you're exporting to fixed point or not. If you're exporting to 24-bit or 16-bit, you have to dither that. If you're exporting to, or if you're not exporting, but if it's just current, if it's directly making the MP3 out of core audio or the VST bus, like I think Reaper will probably do that for you, you don't need a dither going into the MP3. And yet, wisely pick for what remains of the vinyl, because they will still happen, but I don't think it's going to be public facing instead. And I'll do Tangerine Dream. I'll do Phaedra, because Phaedra is a big hit and covers a lot of interesting bases. I'm sure I can talk about that. And with that, I'm not drinking Starbucks. I'm drinking much better coffee than Starbucks. Don't worry about that. I'm drinking much better coffee than Starbucks. I'll tell you about it. I can show you how that works. Some of the stuff that I'm moving towards doing involves me being able to do more in the way of sort of one-off DIY video grabs and things. But that requires time and attention. And I'm pretty much flat out doing what I do already. So I'm just trying to manage it. I have to keep moving rather than just overcommit and wind up burning out. So on that note, I will say good day to you for today. And catch up with you later. I've got a bunch of snow shoveling to do. We had a massive storm. And yeah, I saw the autophagy thing. I'm not really sure what that's about, but we'll see. I will talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.